Welcome to This Old App, a podcast about learning, coding, smashing stuff together, breaking things apart, startups, failing, winning, and any other buzzwords we can think of.
All right. Hey, Randy. We're back for another episode. I know you've been heads down trying to get ready to uproot your life and move it to a new locale.
Yep.
So.
That's all I have to say. Yep.
And I think that's your contribution for today. So yeah. I'll take over from here. So what I've been working on, we talked about it last time. We puzzled through a little bit of trying to get on Azure. Came down to a stupid single dot versus a double dot. But I think what we're going to do today is we're gonna try and dive just a little bit deeper. We won't get technical, but what I wanted to do today was give everyone insight into how I'm fighting through learning something that I started with no knowledge of, and be it right or wrong, it's the way it's going to be not quite stream of consciousness, but it'll be a little bit of what's going on. So
what you're saying is you bought an iPhone?
No, good God.
Oh,
why would I torture myself like that?
Because that's what it sounded like. Sounded like you're trying to like cross the raging river, and I was like, oh, obviously he bought an iPhone. All right, so continue.
No, I actually have to buy something off an iTunes app that's only on iTunes, not Android. So I fired up my old iPad and it won't connect to the internet. So now I got to go figure out I got to go use my wife's iPad, I guess. But anyway, so what I'm trying, so real quick, the problem statement is I'm trying to, in essence, upload a file to OneDrive. Okay, not from my computer, not through the way Microsoft would normally have it, which is install OneDrive on your computer. It becomes a folder, and you just treat it like a file folder. That's the way everybody uses OneDrive, and that's how we've set it up at our company. It's real useful in that context. But in the context of what I'm trying to use it for, I'm trying to create a program that's creating PDFs for us, and then we'll put it in the right folder once it's created. Yeah. So that means I need an API for OneDrive. Well, within the past couple of years, Microsoft came up with what they're calling the Microsoft Graph. Just like Facebook has their social graph and things like that, Microsoft has their graph. And it's essentially their Mongo API, and I don't mean Mongo as in Mongo DB, I mean Mongo as in large. It's a very large API to handle anything Microsoft related. So you can make an API call to send an email from Outlook, to set an appointment in Outlook, to create a Word doc, to do something in Excel, or, as I'm trying to do, to upload something to OneDrive. So I've struggled with it for a few days, and I hit that point where I was like installing things from GitHub, 20 tabs open, just trying to consume as much as I can. And what I found myself doing was I found myself chasing different rabbits. Okay, so I'd chase one rabbit and I go, oh, look at that one. That one looks interesting. I'd go chase another rabbit. And 4 hours later, I'd sit back and go, I'm 6 steps away from where I started. And I wasn't chasing the same problem anymore. What I was doing was I would chase one problem till I hit a little friction. I won't even say till I hit a dead end. It was just a little friction. And then I'd see something else. I'm like, oh, that's probably frictionless. Let's go that way. So I just completely getting lost. So finally I sat down, I said, okay, forget it. And I wasn't doing I wasn't keeping notes. I was, rm-rfing directories left and right just to delete them and start over, just completely wiping things out and starting over numerous
So
times.
let's stop right there, because this is truly the experience that not like new developers have.
Sure.
And you have prefaced this with your starting from scratch on learning this, but the psychology of problem solving and the lack of patience,
yes,
is exactly what you're doing right here in this scenario.
For sure.
This path is where you, like, what I try, and I've done this too. Like, I'm not talking to you like, yeah, I don't do this anymore. I'm admit it. Like, problem solving with tech, I'm going after the most efficient method of solving the problem at the beginning, because I figure I can refactor it later. But the problem with that is that when you don't understand the fundamentals, again, you kind of, everything looks like a shiny object to you, and you just kind of go after whatever's in front, like whatever just shows up or whatever has a reflection, and you just, you don't get focused. So usually what happens for me at this point is I have to sit back, write out the problem, write out the step-by-step what I'm trying to achieve, and essentially what I'm trying to do is slow my brain down to be patient and to quit looking for the easy solutions.
Yeah. And
I want to learn the fundamentals of the steps I'm doing.
Right.
So,
yep. No, that's where I ended up is I spent a few days, and I don't know how many days by this point. It's all a blur at this point. But I spent a few days doing that, chasing different rabbits, and finally I said, you know what, stop. Let's if we're gonna chase these different things, let's at least take notes on what I'm chasing. So that I can come back and go, okay, now I understand why I stopped here. So I just opened up a OneNote file. I figured I'm using OneDrive. I might as well open up Microsoft OneNote and take notes. And I've got a long list of links. So I just started throwing links into this OneNote file, and I threw about 10 links in there, and I said, I'm just going to start here. And I just started working down it. And I fully admit, even when I started doing that, I still kept chasing rabbits. I've got a note here somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. I can't find it, but it's. I will read this one. If completely blocked, try using the Microsoft Graph Explorer to get an auth token to use API. How? I don't know. I just read it was possible. That was literally the note I took. Did I put where I read that? No, that would have been a useful information. But this, like I said, it was kind of just stream of consciousness onto paper or digital paper, so that I could keep track of what I was doing. And what I found myself doing was I was still chasing. I was still trying to redirect when I hit friction, but at least I was keeping notes. And finally, after a couple of days of that, I went back, looked at it, and I went, okay. But I think I told you what I was doing is I took some sample code and I immediately tried to incorporate it in my code. Okay. I didn't make sure the sample code worked first. I just took it and tried to connect all the wires to make sure it worked. And of course it didn't work. So that, again, I was trying to take shortcuts. I was trying to be efficient and say, okay, this obviously works. It's here on GitHub. So I'll just take it and put it in my stuff, and it didn't work. So I eventually got to where I was like, okay, stop. Start with the sample code. Install the sample code. Run the sample code. Make sure it works. And you know what? It worked fine. It worked. It took maybe one or two little things to configure right, and then it worked just fine. So at that point, I was like, okay, got it. All right, this works. Now, instead of saying it works now, let's just plug it all in. Let's do the opposite. Let's take the sample code and just add one little piece to it to see.
So stop right there for a second. What do you call that in the agile world?
Iteration?
No.
What word are you looking for?
Spike? Isn't that what they call a spike?
Could be.
I don't. It's funny. People say, "Do you do agile?" And I'm like, "Sure," because I don't really care. I mean, I try to manage projects with all that stuff, but I always thought that a spike was the idea of trying to get something to work, proof of concept. It's not part of a sprint. It's not part of an epic. It's like, I'm going to do some side work to prove something or to experiment with something. So that's what it sounded like you're doing there.
Yeah, it is. Just to clarify the term, a spike is really where you've got this thing that you can't time box. You can't put an estimate on. So a spike is when you say, okay, we're going to spend one sprint on this. It's going to be about 10 points or whatever the point is. And some people say don't even estimate spikes. They say, take this sprint and do something, do whatever you need to do to be able to time box and estimate this other thing better. Whether that's going and doing proof of concepts or things like that. That's certainly what that is. So yeah, essentially it was, at this point, nothing's working in my code. So let's get something working. I still have not succeeded in even be able to talk to the Microsoft Graph API because it opened up a whole can of worms on auth, which I will freely admit I know very little about. So it was like, okay, I'm going to take this piece of code and make it work. And I did that. And that, again, not again, we haven't said this yet, but it was a success. Success breeds success. So if you've got that one little success, even if it was nothing more than just installing sample code and making it work, you've turned, I turned what was a week of negativity and frustration into progress.
You also validated that you could get it to work in the sense that so it's sometimes it's a relief to know that yes, my code is causing the problem.
Right.
Like the company isn't rejecting me because of some wild crazy thing. The service is not rejecting me and I have to go reach out to them. It's more of like, oh, I'm definitely the problem. I can handle that better than them being the problem. Because them being the problem means I got to go to open a support ticket and stuff.
Right.
That's a pain in the butt.
Right.
But when I'm the problem, I can suck it up and work on it.
Right.
That's why I like that point where I have used their code and I've proven that they're owning up to their end of the deal and I'm failing them drastically, but I can fix it.
Yeah.
So,
and
I like that too.
That's part of that, at least feels familiar, right? With that part of, okay, I know this works. I just got to figure it out now. That feels familiar. Not working, especially in JavaScript world where stack traces get super long and unreadable to a degree. That gets hard. But if you can get a piece working, then you can start picking off the little things. Except I didn't do that either. I took what was working and I instead of putting the stuff that was working into my stuff, I did try the opposite, but I tried to pull a big chunk in. I tried to pull a chunk. What was I trying to do? So first I got wrapped around the axle on there is a small bug somewhere. The specific folder I'm trying to write to is a subfolder within a folder that has literally thousands, probably tens of thousands of files, probably many gig worth of data. And even through the Microsoft Graph Explorer, which is kind of like Postman, it's just an API app widget that you can just make requests on. Even using their thing, I could make a call to a smaller directory, it worked fine. I make a call to that directory and it just comes back blank. So I actually spent 2 days going, well, this is just frustrating. I'm stuck because it's not going to write to my directory. It actually literally took me 2 days to go, no, I don't have to write to that directory today. Today, I need to solve the problem programmatically of how am I going to write to the folder. So I'll just make another folder for now, an empty folder that I can write to, while I'm having the discussion with Microsoft in Stack Exchange as to why this folder isn't working. Because I posted that specific problem on Stack Exchange, and Microsoft came back and said, yeah, it shouldn't be acting like that. So they're looking at that for me. But that was kind of like, oh, well, I can't do anything. And then, a few hours went by. I'm like, well, no, stop. You're making progress. Continue on. Just use a different folder. So that's kind of where it ended up. And like I said, I've got these notes here, and I actually didn't do a good job of taking notes for what I worked on yesterday. I need to go clean those notes up. But The path this took me down was I took this chunk of code that Microsoft gave for accessing their graph through Node, installed it, worked it, and then did little things. Instead of the 10 examples they had, one of the examples they did not have in there was list a directory. Get all the things that are in a directory. So working through the documentation, working through the Explorer, I found the right command to use to list the directory, and I tried to go do that in the code. So I took that little step because I don't really need to list a directory to do what I need to do. But I also understand that listing a directory is probably a heck of a lot easier than uploading a file. So I took that step, and that took me a little while to figure out how to list that directory because there were some, and what that took me down the rabbit hole of is, let me pull up the code here. When you take somebody else's code, unless you spend time studying it ahead of time, you miss things. And the one thing that this was doing was every sample piece of code they had something called request.put.send.set. whatever. But request was always at the front. And I never questioned what request was until I was trying to do something. And then all of a sudden I was like, what is request? Because I don't know what these options of put.send.set, so on and so forth. I don't know where those options are. So all I had to do was obviously scroll up to the top of the file, and right there, request is called Super Agent. It's a package called Super Agent. And Super Agent is, let me see if I can pull up the wording here.
Is that like an authorized permit object or something that they give you? Like you create it, you validate the request body, and then you can do actions on the service. So it's like a service object or something.
Yeah, it's a way to how the wording they're using is awfully flowery and wordy. So let me see if I can find their
I don't want to fret on people's naming, but Super Agent sounds like a crappy name, to be honest.
So here's what it says. Super Agent is lightweight, progressive AJAX API crafted for flexibility, readability, and a low learning curve after being frustrated with many of the existing request APIs. So it's just a request API is essentially all it is.
Yeah. Request agent. Super Agent?
Well, this is better than other agents, so it's Super Agent. I mean, come on.
Well, I know, but super, I don't know. That's just bad name. Think about the junior. Think about the juniors. I mean, think about the developers that are trying to find, like you said, what does the request variable represent at that point in your code? Right. It represents a super agent. All right, now, like if you tell me it's request agent, I don't have to necessarily dig any further to find out what that means. But now you've actually given me a third layer where I have this really abstract term for what sounds like someone that kills monsters on the Men in Black or something. Like, it doesn't make any sense, that name. I think it's
I will argue against that because
all right.
I will say, even if they named it request agent, let's assume there's not something called request agent out there. There aren't going to be necessarily a ton of people who understand what a request agent is. So they're still going to have to go and look at the documentation to figure out what it's doing. Yes, there will be people where the minute they see request agent, they're like, oh, I know what that is. So yeah, this all of a sudden, this all makes sense. But if we're talking about the juniors,
well, I know
the juniors won't, right? Not necessarily.
I know that request to me, and maybe the super agent does all sorts of stuff, and so they're like, it's really super, it does millions of things. But to me, request agent gives me an idea, like, it's certainly not a response agent.
Agreed.
It's certainly on one level where my code is going to make a request, right? What am I going to use? Probably something called a request agent. Like that's what I'm getting at. And that's why. So I guess my point more is, if other people are listening and they are finding them, they're like, what are the names that go with these APIs on the AWS and Azure and all that? I'm like, yeah, they're not always great. Naming is hard. Like, I don't want to get into that discussion, but sometimes I'm like, think of the juniors.
And I understand your point. I still don't completely agree. I think it's fine. Most of the cases, you're going to have to go find what super agent does in the docs anyway. Even if you call it request agent, you're going to have to go find the docs for it anyway. But like I said, that caused me to go do some learning on what super agent does, which isn't a bad thing. Because now all of a sudden I understand the code I'm looking at much more. Because all of a sudden I understand what each of the little dot get, dot put, and all that was. And it makes perfect sense. The next step, just to preface what's coming, the thing, so stepping back all the way. So before I get there, I lost hours yesterday in trying to upload a static file from my server to OneDrive. And I still don't have that working yet because I'm having trouble getting it to say, oh, I see what directory that file is. Even if I get it to spit out the whole directory path and say, yep, that's the directory path. The minute I say, look for a file there, it's like, there's no file there. So I'm still working through that problem. And because of just the way it works, what have I done? I've stopped trying to solve that problem. And I've gone on to, well, you know what? This isn't really what I need it to do anyway. I need it to read a stream and write the stream. So I'm just going to go figure out streams. So what I do, I took what was a very simple problem. I just compounded it by saying, okay, we're going to go make it do streams instead. So I need to get back to basics. I need to figure out why it's not finding that file. Because it's once I need to get back to the step-by-step, but that's essentially where it is right now. And I felt like this was a good conversation topic for today, just so that, because I'm not the only one doing things like this, as we've already said.
Oh no. Let me ask a question here. At this point, if you look at your notes that you have in front of you, and I were to say, Don, I need you to help me unload a truck. And then, of course, you would do that. You would fly all the way to Kansas City. You would help me unload the truck. Your back would be out for a week and you can't do any work on this project. Do you think your notes are strong enough that in a week or two from now, you will truly be able to follow these steps to get back where you are right now?
No. It's better. It's better that I have these notes than to not have them, which is the way I was working before. But these notes, what I have done is I've got the login through an error on the scope variable. I fiddled with it so it would call the variable property and it threw another. So I've got some where it's like it did this and I did this and it solved it. So I do have some specific notes, whereas, hey, you this didn't work and here's why. But not all over.
My recommendation is that you take your notes, write them, refactor your notes for the steps you've taken that you know work. Just put it in a gist or whatever you typically use. I use Simple Note and I use gists a lot. And protect yourself from the getting distracted by work or important things for a period of time. And your memory fades, and then the next time you have to do this, you're like, "Oh my god, I have to start from scratch."
I feel like I'm not starting from scratch, but I would be starting from step 3 instead of step 10, which is where I am. So
you need step 10 written down. You need to clean that up. That's easier said than done when you're busy. But I found myself in that position so many times. I found myself in the position where, and this has been a couple times in Rails, where I want to ask a question or I'm doing a search. Oh, I hated this. And when I did the search, I found a really well presented question, makes perfect sense, and I find out that I'm the jackass that asked the question. And the answer is on there, but I'm like, I really forgot that I had done this before. And I'm like, I'm doing a Google search on something that I could have taken notes on. And I always try to get my students to do this, but I've obviously been guilty of it myself. When you've worked through a problem that has been that frustrating, save the future you. Do the future you a favor and get your notes cleaned up and store it so that the next time it comes up, you can search your own notes first to find out how to get that problem solved.
And I'm going to throw one more tip in there because now that you say that, I realize what I could have done. There were a couple times yesterday where I had half hour, 45 minutes in between a couple things, to where I was like, I really don't want to dig into the code in this amount of time because I'm not going to get far enough in that amount of time to make progress. And I'm just it's going to be worthless. What I could have done in that amount of time, though, is I certainly could have written some notes. It would have been easy enough to take half an hour here, half an hour there, and put some notes together on where I was at the moment. So when you don't feel you've got the time or even necessarily the ability to concentrate due to external distractions, you might be able to write down some things. So that's one tip as well. So that's where I am. I don't, by the time we reconvene in 2 weeks, I expect that this will be done. But you never know. You don't know what'll pop up in the meantime. I do think I'll have this problem solved, but I could be on to the next problem as well. So,
and so you do part of your problem is the rendering of the PDF, right?
No, the PDF renders. Well, okay, so that goes back to the
no. That's part of the solution involves that is what I'm asking.
Correct.
So, but you have that working.
I have that working, and that's the part that's a stream, right? Because the application that renders the PDF renders it as a stream. So you can pipe that to where you need it to go. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I was trying to solve late yesterday, and I was like, stop. Stop. You're now an extra step ahead when you haven't solved the other problem of just getting it to right. So that's I took that step back, and I think I'll be healthier for it.
So tell me one more time how this is triggered.
How
does someone
so
PDF
the PDF? So the whole solution is that there's a web form. People fill out the web form, hit submit, and when they hit submit, it does three things. One, it updates a Trello card. Two, it creates a PDF. And then the part I'm working on is 3, it takes that PDF and uploads it to OneDrive. So this is more of a CTO think question. But I'm just doing devil's advocate here. Sure.
I'm not trying to ruin the fun of learning how to code, because I do this stuff all the time. Are there services that would do all these for you exactly the way you want? Like, is there what's the IFTTT and what's that Z thing?
Oh,
like the little
I know what you're talking about.
We had to Google it.
Yeah,
Zapier.
Zapier, there it is.
So did you by chance look around and see if there was a Zapier plug and play type of service connector that would do all these for you without all the work?
Short answer is no. I did not, because I thought at the end of the day, I thought I was trying to put too much stuff together. I've always, those things are useful, but I've always found them to be, one-step things. When I know that they actually can string a bunch of things together. So no, it's worth it. To be honest, it's probably worth spending half an hour to an hour doing exactly what you said. Because I'm sure if I click on IFFT right here, I'm sure if I typed OneDrive, it would say, "Oh yeah, we can write to OneDrive without a problem." So it's worth digging into.
Zapier PDF creator. Get a PDF of any trigger data using Google Drive with Zapier.
Yeah.
But I don't like I've had to do this stuff over the years, and I don't always reach for the quick and dirty Zapier IFFT service. I'm noticing that more and more I'm finding that these services are doing what I need, and I'm like, oh, for a company or a client, the less I do custom, the better.
Right.
You are the company in this sense, so maybe that's not a big deal. But and also it would completely kill this episode if we'd had nothing to talk about. You're like, oh yeah, I plugged in these things and it worked. But because of the now how prevalent Google Cloud, AWS, and Azure are now being, there's a lot of processes now that will just seamlessly almost take care of that stuff for you. And it's always worth kind of like checking out to see if you can do that instead.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great idea. I wish you'd given me that idea 2 weeks ago. I might have just done it that way. But really, I'm literally going to take I've got to be out of the house in about 2 hours. I'm going to take the next 2 hours and see if I can string something together. Because at the end of the day, yes, I want to build this. But what needs the need is greater. The need to be able to do the thing is greater than the need for me to be able to build the thing.
And the reason I asked that, what actually made me think about this was document uploading. Like, I have dealt with document uploads to storage services for a number of clients, and I had to do it custom because there was no tools for really doing it at the time. And I'm talking 6 years ago. But now there's whole companies The only thing they have done is built very resilient JavaScript uploading tools that push to any type of backend storage, static storage of choice. Rails has added active storage, which allows you to basically use a Rails level API connected to a custom, backend of your choice. And all the stuff that I was doing manually, throw it out the window. There is no reason. And so the same thing I started thinking about was, hey, PDFs are pretty prevalent. Uploading files to storage is prevalent. Are we reinventing the wheel here now compared to what I did before? I'm trying to do that more and more because I love building stuff from scratch, but it's like my job is not to code. My job is to solve problems efficiently and in a maintainable way. And so I don't know. I'm not trying to, but again, I'm not trying to kill the fun.
You know what?
So
maybe our next episode is on the usefulness of IFTTT or Zapier. So and that's fine. And I'm okay. My ego is not so large that I'm not willing to take the simpler path. It just sometimes you have to be reminded of the simpler path.
Can you send a friend a bill for the hours that you saved them?
This is 2 episodes in a row where you've mentioned sending me a bill. So I think the move is getting on your mind as far as all that money going out. And you're like, I need to pull money in. So to everybody,
what was I going to send? What was I going to send you? What was
last
I sending
time
you a
it
bill
was
for?
For debugging on the fly and for solving the problem.
Oh,
What we're going to do is we're going to turn this into an opportunity. So anybody out there that wants to pay for us to host them on the show to solve their problems, let us know.
I'm gonna this is a Patreon moment. I'm gonna set up a Patreon account. Or was it GoFundMe? Is that what people say? GoFundMe to tell you how not to waste your time. That's my GoFundMe service. But yeah, I think I if all of the things that I've done manually instead of finding a service to do for me, I usually come out on the other side being smarter about what I'm always trying to build. So I don't think spiking should always necessarily be you just finding plug and play, depending on your role and depending on what you're trying to do. Experimenting as a developer is fun. That's why I like to do this stuff. And so I don't know. I'm trying to find efficient ways, but I'm trying not to be like the killer of that fun, because that's why we do this show and talk about tech. How fun would a show be where it's like, this week I clicked these 2 buttons and did everything. All right, see you later. But I think it's one of those deals where you want to explore all your options, and sometimes in order to do the coolest stuff, I guess this is probably the better statement. In order to do the coolest stuff, using someone else's work for the boilerplate commodity services will get you there faster to doing the coolest. Because if you want to do, let's say, VR or AR type of stuff where you have to upload data to get that working, if you're dealing with upload processes, you're not going to get the cool stuff. You're going to be sunk in the basics. And if you're learning something, cool, basics are good. But if you're at a point where your business needs to make money, you have to think about the build versus buy scenario, and that's just,
you're absolutely right. So anyway. that's excellent, and this goes back to the buy versus build conversation we've had over on CTO Think. It's the same thing, just on a different scale. So that's where we are. So for those of you stuck to the end, unexpected twist at the end. So we were going down a path, and we chased another rabbit, is what we did.
So I'm about to get ready to do the exact opposite of what I just told you. I could have hired people called movers to drive a truck from Chicago to KC. But we're paying movers to load a truck, and I'm driving it with my wife and 2 cats in the cab from Chicago to KC. So I'm doing it myself. I hope I don't get stuck for a week like you did. That will wreck a lot of plans. But I am going to do a little bit of hands-on moving.
The technology is a little bit more proven of what you're doing.
I think so. Doesn't mean, but the driver, I did get eyeglasses. My night vision is horrible. So the roads are safe, people. Don't worry about it. I can see the signs. But yeah, like it's sometimes you still got to roll up your sleeves and get the job done yourself. Because, or as I would like to say it, if anybody would pay me $4,000 to drive a truck from Chicago to KC, I would do it, and that's how much money I'm saving doing that. So
the moral of that story, everyone, is stay off of I-55 and I-70 or I-80 and I-35 for the next week. I don't know which route he's taken. Depends on
It's only Tuesday you need to be worried. But I'm not saying you shouldn't be worried. I'm just saying it's only Tuesday. The rest of the week, you might have to drive around things.
Well, fortunately, I actually think you're doing the you're using the third-party service on the smart end of it. You want somebody else packing that truck. The driving part is a commodity for the most part. Although not necessarily for you and Megan, because you all haven't had cars in over a decade. So.
We had people that really don't think we've ever driven. Like they're like, "Oh, this is the first time you've had a car." I'm like, "No, I'm from Georgia. They don't know what public transportation is." So, yeah, like I've driven a car, but it's just been a while. Yeah. But yeah, it's you got to get back in the stuff.
Exactly. Well, very good. So we will talk again soon. And thank you for taking us on this unexpected turn. I've got things to go look at.
Okay, man. Take it easy.
See you later.
Later.
Thanks for listening to This Old App. Show notes and previous episodes can be found on our website at www.thisoldapp.online. Reviews on Apple iTunes are always appreciated and help promote the show. For questions, comments, or things you would like to hear on future shows, please email us at hello@thisoldapp.online. Show music is Guns Blazing by Fab Claxton, licensed by Pond 5. Voiceover work by MeganVoices.com. You'll hear from us soon.